Hey there, it's me, and you're watching Marie TV. Now, we recorded this interview long before COVID-19 hit, so you're going to hear us talk about things like traveling and art galleries and other activities that are just not possible at this moment. I'm sending you so much love, and let's dive in.
Now, if you're someone who wants to make the most out of your days, out of your weeks, out of your years, my guest today has some pretty good ideas to help. Robin Sharma is a globally respected humanitarian, best-selling author, and the founder of the Robin Sharma Foundation for Children. Considered one of the world's top leadership experts, his clients include Fortune 100 companies, billionaires, athletes, music icons, and members of royalty. Robin's books have sold over 15 million copies in over 92 languages. Robin, thank you so much for taking the journey to be here.
And so I started listening to that silent whisper of my heart. You know, there's something I believe in, which is instinct is much more powerful and wiser than intellect.
And so did you know what you wanted to do instead of your law career, or was there like a period of transition? I know for me, when I was on Wall Street and I worked in magazines, I kept hearing that little voice of like, this is not where you're supposed to be. This is not who you're meant to be in the world and not the work that you're meant to do.
Anyone on a path to growth and self-excavation and personal mastery is going to be confused all the time. Because the very nature of leaving your safe harbor of the known, going out to blue ocean where possibility lives constantly, means you're going to be out in the unknown, which is where fear lives. But on the other side of your fear is your freedom. So I self-published a little book called Mega Living. That was actually my first book, and it had a super cheesy title, 30 Days to a Perfect Life. Yeah. And I had this little passport picture on the front, and it was poorly designed, and the type was so small you couldn't read it.
And I just remember that journey, and it turned from an ebook into a self-published book, and my parents helped me get it out into the world and shrink wrapped it. And I just look back at those days and it was so cool, like the beginnings and then to see where it could go. So how was this process different than your other books?
Whether that happened or not is up to the readers. I don't know if you've read it, but it's just a masterpiece of philosophy. And so that was my intention with the 5 a.m. Club. So I wrote it in Rome, which is one of my favorite places in the world. I wrote it in Mauritius. I wrote it in Russia. I tried to have images, like little pieces of art in there. I have these frameworks on exponential productivity and elite performance.
I'm trying to understand a little bit more about what made this one more difficult or different than the others for you, because you've written a lot. You've written a ton of books.
There was a lot of self-doubt as well when I wrote this book, because I think when you try to present anything new to the world, you're gonna doubt yourself. Yeah. I hadn't written a book for roughly 10 years.
Interesting.
And I wanted to do something that was something that was hopefully special. So yeah, and I think that's an important point, which is I think we live in a world where the seduction is to push 1,000 pieces of mediocrity versus deliver one piece of mastery. Yeah. That is much more about egoism versus heroism, and I think heroism is. It's really, the race is really a race against yourself. I'm not that into applause and worldly accolades. I think if you feel you've done your best and you've been true to your creativity and you've lived by your values and you've released what you believe to be magic to the world and you've done your best to raise others while you've honored yourself, it doesn't matter if you're an army of one.
So let's talk about the 5 a.m. Club specifically. I love the subtitle, which is Own Your Morning.
There is a reason many of the great women and men of the world, the great history makers, the great poets, the great philosophers, the great movement makers rose before the sun. There is a magic in the air at 5 a.m. And that's why the 5 a.m. Club is so transformational, because it's the time of greatest quietude. It is a time of intimate creativity because you've just been rested. There's very recent cutting edge science coming out now. When you sleep, your brain actually has a mechanism to wash itself. And then it's not just get up at 5 a.m. and scratch your stomach or stare up at the ceiling.
Or look at your phone.
Or especially not. And so the 5 a.m. Club method is based on the 20-20-20 formula. I'm happy to get into it, but that is
tell us what it is.
That's the revolutionizer. And so the 20-20-20 formula that the book is based upon is pretty simple. You're going to release norepinephrine, which will boost your focus. The people who live beautiful lives are very intentional. Mm-hmm. They're very deliberate. They're very conscious. And I believe the leader who learns the most wins. So that's, in a nutshell, the 20-20-20 formula.
So one of the gifts I've developed from doing this show for almost a decade now is I can almost hear when folks are like, but wait. So for my audience who's thinking, all right, Robin, this sounds good, waking up at 5 a.m., but what about the fact that I have, tiny babies and a dog that just threw up and all of these kind of concerns or constraints that I don't think I can do this?
Well, the pathway to world class is hard. Evening routines are the price of admission for world class. University College London says it takes 66 days of practice to wire in a new habit. In other words, the gift of genius is not genius. The gift of genius is actually neuroplasticity. And I think you can cling to your excuses, or you can go out there and have an impact and live a fulfilling life and be highly creative and enjoy the magic life, but you don't get to do both. I believe that elite performance without deep recovery leads to depletion of all your assets of genius. But I think growth comes from stretching ourselves, And one thing, often we talk about physically, but in the book, I think one of the disruptive ideas are the 4 interior empires. And if I may, I'd just love to get into it because everyone's talking about mindset, like everything is mindset. Change your thinking, change your life. How can I serve as many people as possible? I suggest to you, when you calibrate your soul set, you become a force of nature on the planet that becomes undefeatable, and yet people don't really focus on soul set.
It feels like the errors in every single facet of every single industry have skyrocketed way more than I've ever noticed as an adult. So we can go wherever you want to go with this, but you were one of the first people that talked about that, the kind of epidemic of just shoddy, crappy work and mistakes that are being made. And I think as you do, a lot of it has to do with distraction and technology in our phones.
For sure. And you're right. Now it's very popular to talk about the addiction to technology. I've been talking about it for over 10 years. And one of my brain tattoos that I share in the book is an addiction to distraction is the death of your creative production. And we all know about the dopamine addiction that happens when you play with your phone. It taps into the nucleus accumbens of the brain, which is the reward center. So everyone who can't break free of their technology is like a cocaine addict. They are hooked to their phone versus hooked to their projects and hooked to their values and hooked to doing something that's going to allow them to feel amazing about their lives at the end. You want to talk about the mistakes being made, it is stunning. There are very few people who are fully present. And yet one of the traits of the great geniuses is this: they could spend long stretches of time in acute focus, thinking about one project free of distraction.
But they've just met the bar of what's expected. Anyway, I think there's just an opportunity for people when they bring their full presence and their heart to their work. You will be seen now, given the landscape, as extraordinary.
In the 5 a.m. Club, I call it a GCA, a gargantuan competitive advantage. Yeah. But right now, there's so much loneliness on the planet.
And he's like, what the hell are you doing? So don't allow yourself to get exhausted. So I want to talk about the importance of taking breaks throughout the day and also time off. As the time of this recording, I know we don't necessarily air immediately, but I'm getting ready to take a nice little 2-week trip to Italy. And first stop is Rome. And it has been transformative for my business the past couple years. But talk to me about how this has played out in your own life, because you're busy, you run a business, you speak around the world.
And I smile because after this interview, and thank you again for the opportunity and privilege to be with you. But I smile because after this interview, I go dark for a long time as well. If you're not scheduled 24/7, then you're a loser and you're not doing something right. What I believe, and the research actually bears this out, the Energy Project, for example, has done some wonderful work in this field. Your high excellence cycle and your deep recovery cycle. And so what I'm trying to suggest is if all you're doing is being an elite performer, then you're going to actually deplete the very assets that allow you to own your game and play the long game. In the book, there's a concept I teach, Marie, called the 5 great hours concept. But we're cognitive workers now. We're creative workers. And so I teach people work from 8 o'clock till 2 o'clock. And then at 2 o'clock, go to an art gallery, go get a massage, go get on your mountain bike. I mean, 5 incredibly powerful hours every day. You don't need to work any more than that.
You're right. Tomorrow is a promise, not a fact. I often like to say we're all on the same train heading to the same destination. We just don't know when our stop is coming up. If you had one piece of advice, what would you share with them?
Stay with it for 66 days. Make that commitment. Look at how your life looks like in terms of your productivity, happiness. And my dad used to say, son, when you were born, you cried while the world rejoiced. Did you walk towards your fears, and as messy and bloody as it was, so you wear your scar tissue with pride? And number 2,
they are very important, and your work is very important. And thank you so much for this beautiful book and for making the time to be with us today. So we covered a lot of juicy stuff today. And of course, you can let us know if you want to become a member of that 5 a.m. club. You'll get instant access to an audio I created called How to Get Anything You Want. Stay on your game and keep going for your dreams, because the world really does need that special gift that only you have. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time on Marie TV.